Welcome to Teal Talk, a podcast brought to you by the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence. That's OAESV for short. We're your hosts, Taylor
and Laurie.
In each episode, we speak with professionals in the field to dive deep into the intersectional issues that affect survivors in Ohio.
Before we begin, we want to give a content warning that we will be discussing sexual violence and other issues that may be upsetting and triggering. If you need help, please feel free to call our resource line at 888-886-8388 during regular business hours, or the Ohio Sexual Violence Helpline 24/7 at 844-644-6435. Please take care of yourself.
Hello, and welcome to Teal Talk. We have now reached 2025, and you're listening to the first episode of the year. I can't believe I just said that. Every month we record, I'm like, this year is just flying by so fast, and we're finally here. I'm one of your hosts today, Laurie Hamame, the Communications and Resource Coordinator.
And I'm Taylr Ucker-Lauderman, Chief Engagement Officer, and I am with you. I think I'm just letting go of months now at this point in my life. Things are going to go by in quarters, I think, because months are just too quick to conceptualize. We do get to be here with some awesome guests this morning. We have a couple of members from our leadership team with us, and we're going to talk a bit about what happened in 2024. What were we excited about, if we ran into any challenges, and then we'll get to look ahead a bit for 2025.
So we have three wonderful OAESV staff with us today. You may remember our Vice President of Operations, Chandra Ingram. She was on our first episode of the year last year, and she has been with OAESV since 2017.
Hi, Laurie and Taylor. It's nice to be back in the podcast room. I'm excited to talk about 2024, how we wrapped up, and what we're looking forward to in 2025.
And we have two new guests. Nicole Cass-Colvin, Director of Coordinated Community Responses, has been with OAESV since 2021.
Hey everyone, so excited to be on the podcast. I'm super excited to talk about my team's 2024 and 2025 as well.
And last but not least, Becca Getson, our Director of Advocacy and Legal Services, and she has been with OAESV since 2018. We're so excited to have you here with us.
Hi, thanks, Laurie. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about 2024 and also 2025. So just really excited to be here.
Yay! I think we should kick off with all the good stuff. I'd love to hear about the successes that you saw with your team or with the organization as a whole.
I can kick us off if that works for everybody else. I took notes because I didn't want to forget things. So Advocacy Legal Team serves survivors across Ohio with a variety of needs. We did family law cases, we did Title IX cases, we did a lot of CPOs this year. So a lot of great work. We also did a lot of advocacy, so both advocacy and direct representation across the state, rural areas, urban areas, so worked with a lot of different survivors. We also provided training to advocates, attorneys, along with other crime victim service professionals. We worked with our policy team here to help understand some of the Title IX legislation. While there's still some issues with that right now, try to help explain that and kind of what that impact is to survivors. We also work with the Coordinated Community Response Team, so shout out to Nicole and her team to train law enforcement and nurses on forensic exams. We also worked with them to host story center sessions to help facilitate them sharing their stories. We presented at state and national conferences, so a lot of great work for OAESV shared across the state, but also nationally as well. So really making sure to share about sexual violence and its connection to legal systems, trauma-informed practices, and also strangulation. And then kind of last but not least is providing some resources for those assisting survivors, but also those survivors who are doing their cases pro se, so without additional support from legal representation. So really putting out a lot of resources as well for those survivors who are doing the system and working through the legal system on their own. So really proud of all of our resources we provided and all of our training we provided this year.
Everything you mentioned, so many of those things are also things that my team is working on. So I'm just like, also grateful because I'm coming back after some vacation and I'm like, okay, cool, reminding myself what all we've been doing this year. But yeah, similarly, my team has been doing a lot of the things that Becca has mentioned as well. We've been really taking over national conferences this year with our housing program. Jasmine did, like 3 or 4 presentations at the National Sexual Assault Conference. We also provided those SA kit trainings that Becca mentioned, training law enforcement, training nurses, and found those things really, really impactful. A lot of the participants really mentioned that they learned a lot. We found that the baseline knowledge for these kits and exams is pretty low. So we found that this was a really impactful training to be able to get folks involved in the work that we're doing and doing so in a really trauma-informed way. And I think our nursing program has been really critical to that. We've also been doing a lot of work with the Rural Storytelling Project. As Becca mentioned, we were able to work with 9 survivors to tell their stories in videos. And it's just, I don't even have the words. It's such an impactful project. So we'll be having more information about that in the future. I'm maybe getting ahead of myself, but excited to share about all of the things we learned in this project, and also just the beauty of hearing survivor stories and being able to walk with folks in their stories in a way that's really healing. A lot of folks said it was even more healing than like therapy and things like that, to be able to tell their story. We also have been doing a lot of that housing work, as I mentioned. So we've provided over 4,000 nights of shelter to survivors. There's probably a more updated number, but we've been able to serve hundreds of survivors. And we've also filled up our transitional housing program, which this is a brand new program, filled up right away. We're able to house 7 survivors for up to 2 years, which is just so exciting. We're also working on the sexual assault nurse examiner statewide protocol and other great things too. So I feel like this year has really boomed for my team. We're having our hands in a whole bunch of different things.
It's so amazing, I feel like, to just sit back and think about all of the things that we've done this year and to be excited about. I feel like so often we're like in the trenches and in the work that we don't get to really reflect on all of the amazing things that we've been able to do for survivors, on behalf of survivors, and for our member agencies and with our member agencies this year. So I'm excited to add some more to the amazing things that we've done in 2025. And I think it's just a testament to our team, to the strength of our team and the resiliency and the dedication of our team. So we couldn't do this work without, our amazing funders and receiving grants and donations. And so we did have, I don't know if we talked about it, last time I was in the podcast den, but some of the work that Becca talked about, we were able to do a few different projects that we received. So we received funding from the Ohio State Bar Foundation to do some of the work that Becca talked about. We also were asked to reapply for the Legal Assistance for Victims program, the LAV program, that is a really competitive grant. So it was such an honor and a privilege, and I think a testament to the great work that that team has been doing to be asked by our funders to reapply for that. We received funding from Senator Sherrod Brown's office this year, some federal dollars to be able to continue the housing work that Nicole was talking about us being able to do. So that has been, again, just a testament to the great work that our team has done, that funders are trusting us, with these resources. I'm excited too that we filled one open position. We added Caroline, our legal services specialist, on our advocacy and legal team. That was a position that we had open for a little bit, so that was exciting. And then we added 2 more positions this year. So Nikki is our director of grant management and sustainability. So she's been helping with our fundraising and with our grants. And then we can't do this without our beautiful finance team. So Lisi is our administration and finance specialist. That's a mouthful. So she's been helping Lana and our finance team manage all the wonderful grants that I just kind of chatted about. Just excited to see that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say we had maybe one of our largest, dare I say, Advocacy Day attendance this year. So our public policy team has been rocking and rolling. That's been amazing. So it's just great that we're able to extend and expand OAESV. And when I started in 2017, there was like 6 of us, and there's over 20 of us now. So I think that's just a testament to our wonderful leadership and the relationships that Rosa has built too. So that's been exciting to see as well.
I want to pop in too and say, as you're talking about expanding the organization, one thing that I forgot to mention is that we just wrapped our first full year of reigniting our Survivor Advisory Council, our Survivor Empowerment and Advisory Council. So that's really exciting for us as well to have survivors as a part of our organization, as a part of the work that we're doing and central to the work that we're doing as well. So thanks, Chandra, for talking about all of the expansions too. It's just so exciting.
Yes, and they spoke at our Advocacy Day event. So those who were at the morning portion of that got to hear a little bit from the council. The team I lead is the communications and resource team. So I did want to shout out a little bit about what we've been up to. So we definitely have a big hand also in our annual conference. So huge shout out to that. It was also, I think, our largest year for our annual conference as far as the numbers I know about, and especially thinking about getting back in person after everything that's been happening with COVID. We are just glad to be able to be back in community. So we had a 2019 in person, and then slowly we've been getting back to that. So our 2024 conference, it was really great to see so many faces with us. Also, I want to shout out our annual report. And I know it might seem like maybe like a trivial thing compared to the amazing crisis services and things that we do with survivors, but I love that that's something that the resource and communications team gets to do. We can showcase in more detail even everything that we've been up to. So folks who are wondering or want to take part in anything that we're doing, or just want to look for inspiration if they're a part of another organization, can look at that and see a bit more about what we've been able to accomplish. And it's truly always amazing to see those numbers and those stories in there. Also, part of what we do on the comms team is not just showcasing what we do or promoting trainings or doing public awareness work, but also TA and training related to communications. So I like to sometimes give a little bit of the behind the scenes. And another project that we've been working on is getting together with a consultant and looking at how can we better help the community and even folks working in the RCC field to know about our coalition and be able to take advantage of the things that we offer, the best practice trainings, the TA, we have amazing scholarships that we offer and things like that. So it's been really cool to be able to think intentionally about that with a little bit more space this year. And I'm excited to share some of those lessons learned too with our members next year.
I loved all the words that I was hearing, like the biggest, the largest, taking over, growing, expanding. It's one thing to be given the opportunity to do something or the funding to host a program, but then to also have the opportunity to keep going with it and to sustain it and do it again. That's a whole other thing that I think is so amazing.
So thinking about all of the awesome stuff that we did, none of it is easy. Let's be honest. None of it is easy. So are there any challenges or barriers that we ran into that you all want to share a little bit about when it comes to 2024?
I can hop in and get us started. So when I was thinking about what those challenges and barriers are this year, I feel like they're pretty consistent, but one of the things that kind of keep coming to mind for me. So within the advocacy and legal team, we do both direct service work and also support and resources. So I know when working with Stephanie, Caitlin, and Caroline for the clinic, with Shelby for advocacy, is ensuring that we're balancing those direct service work directly with survivors, but also supporting members, right? Supporting RCCs and shelters and dual programs and all the members who need those resources. So really kind of making sure that we're balancing that direct service work with the resources and services that we want to make sure and provide to across the state or the nation. The other thing that came to mind this year was intentional building self-care into our routines and practices. And that's for anyone listening to this as well, right? So something that I know that I talk a lot about is how are we building self-care into our regular routines? And it's not a tack on, it's not an add-on, it's not at the bottom of the plate that you're like, oh, I have 5 minutes, so now I'll do something, but to intentionally build that self-care into the work we're doing to ensure that we can maintain this work, right? And maintain our work with survivors and with each other in a really helpful and productive way. So those are kind of the two big things that I was thinking about in terms of the challenges throughout this year, is what that looks like for everyone.
Say it again, Becca. Say it again.
thinking about what you're saying, Becca, and also Laurie, what you mentioned about doing more and like all of the different things, I think this work is so vast. There are so many things that we do and like so many things that we can do. We know that sexual violence is so very prevalent and that there are so many survivors across the state of Ohio, and it's a huge responsibility. And I think for myself and my team, it can feel like a different kind of trauma than when we're doing direct service work, and along with the direct service work that we do, right? Of like, oh, we are responsible for supporting an entire state and ending sexual violence. And there are so many different things that we can do with that. And there are so many different needs that come up with that too. Like we know that landlords and hotels don't always treat survivors the best. And so, there are many opportunities to support in those ways. We know that there are huge gaps in medical care for survivors, that survivors get transferred from hospitals. We believe that every medical professional should be trauma informed, and they're just not. And there are many counties that may not have coordinated community response teams or might have infighting and things like that. And so like that is a lot to think about, all of the different things that we could be doing, and also like all of the gaps that exist out there, and just being able to like let that go at the end of the day and do what we can. Yeah, I think that can contribute to like trauma and burnout and things like that, to just think of the vastness of sexual violence in our state. And so, yeah, I don't know how to like finish that thought, but I feel like that's been a main challenge for my team. And like knowing too the impact, some of the trauma that folks who are doing like direct service are facing. I know that Tammy shared with me that a ton of medical professionals right now are having some intense health issues, and we know that trauma impacts health. And so seeing how some of the gaps can impact people's livelihood and well-being can just be a lot to hold.
Yeah. I echo everything that Becca and Cass Colvin have said. One of the things that it does make me proud of, though, in terms of self-care, is that at the organization, we have been able to continue to provide our team with self-care stipends quarterly. And then we were able to add an extra one in 2024 at the end of the year, which I think is always great to do. We're always trying to figure out how can we balance like work and life and mitigate the vicarious trauma that our team experiences. So I echo that challenge as well. And I think because I sit on the operations team, my lens is a little different, right? I'm always looking at internal processes and our staff and how can we support them to the best of our abilities. And while it's so great to talk about, the personnel that we've been able to add to the team and the grants that we've been able to receive, growth comes change, right? And change management is a process. It is a slow and tedious process. So I think with our team, we're constantly looking at how can we improve processes for our internal administration to make the work a little smoother and easier. So that's always something that we're thinking about. Our theme for 2024 was efficiency and transparency. So we wanted to make sure that the work was more efficient and more transparent as much as possible internally. And while we have absolutely gotten some new grants, there have been some grants that we applied for that we didn't get to. And I think it's just as important to honor that as well, that we're always constantly looking for different funding sources to make sure that we can maintain and sustain, continue to grow the work as well. And then I think I might have chatted about it last time, but we officially adopted in 2024 a 32-hour work week policies and practices. And so while that is exciting, that has also come with change, right? Making sure that we are also thinking about the amount of work and the capacity and really kind of honing back in so that we can really do our work with efficiency and with integrity in 32 hours. And that's going to take some time, right? It's exciting at the beginning, but how are we paring down the work and sharing the work so that we can really truly say that we can be successful at the 32-hour work week? So that's always been a work in progress. It continues to be a work in progress as well.
Absolutely. And some of the challenges I was going to share really aligned with what you all already said, which was folks are so busy that it's hard sometimes to really engage in the ways that we know we need to. So this came up recently at the CCRT Summit, Bridging the Gaps. This came up in one of the breakout conversations also, where it's like, what needs to be done, some of the gaps that are happening, you see the people that you need to be talking to, and you just can't get them. Like you can't get on their calendar or can't get on your own calendar, or the things just aren't happening. And so that capacity is way down here and the need for engagement is way up here, like the amount of information that we need to be sharing. So thinking about all the information we want to share, all of the trainings we want to tell people about, and it is a lot of stuff that we want to fit while knowing people have like 5 minutes to look at our emails maybe once a week. So that just gets to be really hard. And it sounds like that is something that's happening on multiple layers in all the different areas. So I hope that we can all continue to hold space for that, keep working on the self-care, keep working on like the benefits at your organizations that could help, keep looking at vicarious trauma reflections and practices. So that's been hard and it will continue to be hard. It's hopeful to hear and be able to remind the listeners about the things we've been trying to do to address that. So while I know it's a challenge, I know we're also working at it.
I always joke, but not joke, to Taylor during our one-on-one meetings that like, oh, I'll add that to my list of things to do when I have nothing to do. But that list just keeps growing. So
because that time doesn't exist.
Yes. So we just spent a few minutes looking back at this year, reflecting on the barriers and successes. I'm curious to hear a little bit about what you're looking forward to in 2025, new projects you'll be building on and continuing, et cetera, et cetera. Becca, do you want to kick us off again?
As has become our habit, this podcast. So as a couple of things kind of came to mind when I'm thinking about 2025, and maybe that's just the mindset I'm in right now, but as Chandra mentioned, we have received a new round of LAV funding. So I'm really excited. We've shifted our priorities a little bit. So I'm excited to see those priorities kind of come into practice, right? So kind of a new shift of like folks and communities that we're really hoping to engage with more, to bring in different survivors and things like that. So really excited to see that in action in 2025 and into 2026. So really excited about that and what that could look like in engaging different communities than we have in the past. Throughout 2024, Shelby has been doing some great work in providing a lot of resources and services and things like that. She's also been asked to come into other state coalitions and state organizations. So I'm excited to see where she's going in terms of the presentations that she's providing both across the state and nationally. So doing some really great work on sharing information. So excited to see that. And then we are also hoping to update. We have 2 legal manuals that haven't been updated in a while. So, well, I don't know, maybe minor, maybe a smaller thing, but it's a heavy lift. But we have 2 legal manuals we're hoping to get updated for folks, because we know that we cannot be available to everyone, right? As Taylor was just talking about, our capacity isn't always where we want it to be. So we know that those are places where we can't always be available. So making sure to partner with some folks across the state to get those manuals updated so that both advocates and survivors have more up-to-date information readily available without needing to access us all the time, right? That they can access those resources instead. So a couple of projects that I'm really looking forward to and excited to kind of see where they go.
I can mix it up and go next, because Becca mentioned something that I had in mind too, which is I can already see on the horizon, looking at our grants for this year and plans that people have looped me in on. And we have some really cool resources coming out this year, which honestly we do every year, but it's still good to highlight it and be excited. So I'm pumped for that. And some are revisions, but we need to keep up with that, right? And some are brand new. So super excited about that. One of those resources is going to be our SAM Toolkit in April, and we're excited to share that that's going to be focused on some communications related pieces to support doing news interviews and sending out press releases and all those types of things to prep for kind of the community awareness aspect of our members' SAM programming. And then we also are hoping in 2025 to make space for a communications related training. So I don't have much more to share on it yet, but we are really grateful that we get to do this about every couple of years, to even have a communications team, let alone be able to like bring in trainers and offer this type of information is not very heard of in the nonprofit world, and especially in the anti-sexual violence world. So excited about that we get to do it and we get to share it.
And that last training was so good. The last one that we had, like, honestly, I would recommend like anybody attend like our communications trainings. I think there are a lot of really great skills that we learned.
Good. And let me throw out there, since you mentioned it, we do have some of that information available online. So if you go to our website and look at our resources, there's some that say communications, and that'll have some of the speakers and the resources that they shared. We got to work with Chanel Matthews, who does some really great work with Movement for Black Lives and Me Too and all these great organizations. And if you are a member of OAESV, you should have some printed versions of the training from Chanel in particular at your organization. So
since we're shaking it up a little bit, I can go next. A few things I'm really excited about. We worked with Laurie Litton again to update our strategic plan. So I'm super excited to have an even more robust strategic plan for our agency, which is always for me our North Star in terms of where we're going. I'm excited about the growth because we are adding 3 new positions to OAESV. So that's exciting and terrifying at the same time because again, with growth comes change. But again, hoping that we can help our team out and so spread some of that capacity around too. I'm also super excited that we were able to send over 50 of our member agencies to 2 days in May by the Attorney General's office, hosted by the Attorney General's office, NOVA and NSAC, and we have even more funding this year. I think it's always a treat for our member agencies to go to national and statewide conferences outside of the OAESV ones that are reduced fee and mostly free for our member agencies. And then we are doing a really robust data collection project that I won't talk too much about, but hopefully we'll be able to support our programs in collecting data and being able to really have a lay of the land of the state. So we really be able to see what sexual violence prevention is looking like around the state. So we have our data folks working on that, and that's super exciting too.
Oh, I really love being able to be so excited for what's coming up next. As you mentioned, Chandra, one of the big things for my team that I'm really excited for is having a new team member. So, coordinator of community responses. So I'm just so excited to expand my team and be able to do more with SARTs and coordinated community response teams. So that's really exciting. We also have all sorts of projects coming up that I'm just so thrilled about. So Chandra had mentioned earlier our funding from Senator Brown's office. We're so excited for that because that'll be a chance for us to continue some of our hotel, motel, and transitional housing programs and to be able to prioritize Central Ohio. This will also give us opportunities to support survivors in creative and needed ways. We wrote in funding for things like welcome baskets, things like moving expenses, those little things that make a world of difference for getting somebody safe housing. We also are working with the Bloomberg grant to be able to do some information gathering on the impacts of sexual violence housing, how that creates change and impact for survivors, as well as what some of the barriers and needs are in our rural areas to be able to access that housing. So excited to see what some of that information turns out to be. Our forensic nursing program has some really cool things in the works too, creating curriculums for medical forensic exams and also creating more training on the kits since we saw that was such a huge need. So we'll see that coming up in the future. And we're going to be continuing some of our work training law enforcement. We have some webinars planned for this summer with retired detective Matt Stegner, who was just phenomenal in our last training. So this will be really great, like kind of peer-to-peer law enforcement training that we hope will make a really huge difference in trauma-informed care for survivors and impactful and effective investigations. Aside from that, we'll also be working on continuing some of our rural work and being able to share some of those survivor stories, continuing to train our rural communities and our other communities across the state that may have rural catchments on the needs of survivors in rural communities and how we can best reach them. Because we know that there are gaps in rural communities, that there aren't always rape crisis centers or CCRTs or SARTs. So we want to make sure to reach everybody. So I'm excited for that. And we're also continuing our Survivor Empowerment and Advisory Council. We have some of our prior members staying on with us, which is really exciting. And I feel like they've just really blossomed in so many wonderful ways. And they're excited to do more public speaking. They're putting in some conference proposals. So excited to hear more from them.
That is awesome. I love that. Thank you all so much. And there is so much more that could be shared. Like I said, we don't have everybody from the leadership team here, and certainly not all of the staff are here and represented for the work that they're doing necessarily. So please keep listening to future episodes, keep watching our emails, our newsletters, our social media, because there's a lot more to come for 2025. Before we go, I am curious if you all would be willing to give maybe like a 1 to 2 sentence motivational message to inspire our listeners, because we did recently launch our 2025 Voices of Change campaign. So what do you have to say to our listeners that can inspire them to be a voice of change?
I'm going to keep it rolling, and I'm going to go first again. So for me, I think what I would share is don't listen to the imposter syndrome or the doubt in your brain. All voices matter, whether you vocalize, you write, you sign, however you communicate, you can be a voice of change. I think that's really important to remember, that we all can, no matter how we communicate and no matter how long we've been in the field or things like that. So just keeping that in mind.
Honestly, I think Becca did a mic drop. So I don't know that I want to add on to that. That was beautiful, Becca. And I would just ditto everything Becca just said. Thanks, Becca.
Right. I'm like, what do you say after that? Yeah. Similarly, I think your voice makes a difference. Use your voice. It makes more impact than you know.
Yeah. Like literally also, we cannot do it alone. We can't do this work in silos. Only OAESV cannot do it. Only one RCC cannot do it. We have to come together, and all of our community members as well. So that's what this theme is all about, is we've got to have all of us, multiple of us. And like Becca said, the way that your voice is, however it comes, is important, and we need it. We've got to work together to move forward. Laurie, do you want to share one?
What message do I have? I always love to tell people and myself to just be unapologetically yourself. So that ties in with Becca's message of ignoring the imposter syndrome, but also knowing that however you show up, if you're serious, silly, messy, goofy, whatever emotional state you're in, you can show up that way, because how you show up, it's worthy and it's welcome. As we are wrapping up, I want to echo Taylor's message about not having all of our teams represented here. So if you'd like to learn more about the work we did in 2024, stay tuned for our annual report coming out here in just a few short months.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Teal Talk. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into intersectional issues affecting survivors in Ohio. If you like what you heard, subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating and review, recommend us to a friend, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at OAESV and Twitter at Ohio Alliance ESV. If you'd like to learn more about us and the services we offer, sign up for our email list, or read a transcript of this episode, visit oaesv.org.
Want to share a comment or ask a question for a future episode? Just click on the link in the show notes to leave us a voicemail. And remember, we're here to help. Feel free to call our resource line at 888-886-8388 during regular business hours, or the Ohio Sexual Violence Helpline 24/7 at 844-644-6435. See you next time.